Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming and watching this today. I'll be talking about BeSmart, which is a program developed by Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America to bring together parents and all adults concerned about kids, guns, and safety. My name's Lori. I'm a mom of 2 adult children and a brand new grandmother. I'm also a retired kindergarten teacher, and after I retired, I knew I wanted to help children stay safe from gun violence, and I found the BeSmart program. So I hope you will find it as interesting and helpful as I have. And first of all, I want to let you know there are a lot of numbers in this presentation, so just bear with me. Here we go. So starting off, in the US, firearms are the second leading cause of death for children and the first leading cause of death for Black children. And I actually believe that that has gone up now to be the first leading cause of death for all children. As this slide shows, more than 1,600 children under the age of 18 are killed with guns in the US every year. And that's an average of 5 children every day. When children in America are killed with guns, the majority of those deaths, 53%, are homicides, and that's nearly 900 children per year. Another 700 children die by firearm suicide every year, and 90 are unintentionally shot and killed. We know that approximately 5.4 million children live in the US in a household with at least one loaded, unlocked gun. And this number has likely increased in light of the surge in gun sales during the COVID-19 pandemic. And while school shootings and mass shootings typically make national headlines, the reality is that for children under the age of 13, gun homicides most frequently occur in the home. And one study showed that nearly 90% of unintentional shooting deaths and injuries among children under the age of 15 also occurred in the home. What's more, we know that in incidences of gunfire on school grounds, up to 80% of shooters under the age of 18 obtain the guns they used from their homes or the homes of relatives or friends. So I know this is an emotional issue, and we may come from different walks of life. You are parents or grandparents. Some of you may be gun owners, and some of you may not be. You may have had personal experience with guns, and some of you may have even been impacted by gun violence. We believe that gun owners want to be responsible gun owners, so we are here today to talk about what all of us, gun owners and non-gun owners alike, can do to make sure children don't have unsupervised access to guns. So for now, let's leave politics at the door, and I think we can all agree on these 3 things. First, we want all kids to grow up happy and healthy. Second, we each have the right to make responsible decisions about how to protect our homes, families, and communities, including whether or not to have a gun in our home. And third, if we can prevent even one child gun death or injury, it's our responsibility to do so. So we're not here to talk about laws or policies, so let's set those aside for now. Some of you may remember from the news the first story in the top left. In January of 2018, there was a school shooting in Kentucky at Marshall County High School. More than a dozen students were shot and wounded. 2 of them, Bailey Holt and Preston Cope, were killed. The 16-year-old shooter had gained access to his stepfather's unsecured pistol from his bedroom. The next tragedy took place in May of 2018. A 4-year-old boy from Louisa, Virginia, unintentionally shot his 2-year-old brother Tyson after accessing an unsecured gun that was kept high in an upper cabinet. The next headline on the bottom left illustrates that when kids are looking to carry guns out of fear, easy access to guns can help facilitate the cycle of violence. Like 17-year-old Zeke of Jackson, Mississippi, who told the Jackson Free Press that some young people in his community carry guns out of fear of being robbed or shot and believe that having a gun will allow them to defend themselves. And then let me also point out our final story in the bottom right about 13-year-old Mikey from Brewster, New York. Mikey was a friendly, popular 8th grader. He was an expert bowler, an avid athlete, and he loved video games. In January 2013, Mikey came home from school and took one of his father's unlocked, loaded guns, and he shot himself. His family knew Mikey to be a happy kid, and they didn't believe he had planned to die that day. But with easy access to a loaded gun, Mikey made an impulsive decision that tragically became a fatal one. All four of these stories show the fallout of when young people get their hands on unsecured guns. No story is quite the same, but all are tragic and all are preventable. So it's important to remember that even if you are practicing secure storage, or even if you don't have a gun in your home, you can't be sure about other homes. You can't be sure about how responsible other people are being. And that's where our BeSmart program becomes helpful. What can we do? We can learn to be smart. So let's start with the S, secure your guns in homes and vehicles. 13 million households with children contain at least one gun, and the majority of children in gun-owning households know where the gun is stored. And we already know that in incidences of gunfire on school grounds, the majority of shooters under the age of 18 obtain the guns or a gun from their home or the homes of friends or relatives. Like the tragedy that we talked about at Marshall County High School in Kentucky. So what do I mean by securing guns? Guns should be stored locked and loaded with ammunition stored separately. Hiding a gun is not securing a gun. And we know that can lead to tragedy. As we talked about with the 4-year-old Virginia boy who unintentionally shot his 2-year-old brother after accessing an unsecured gun that was just stored high in an upper cabinet. And remember Zeke from Mississippi, who spoke of the complicated safety reasons that push some teens to want a gun? Keep in mind that kids may feel a variety of emotions about guns, from curiosity to fascination to fear. As adults, it's our responsibility to prevent easy access to guns. Research also shows that secure storage is associated with a decreased risk of firearm suicide and unintentional firearm injury among children. One study showed that households that locked both firearms and ammunition had a 78% lower risk of self-inflicted firearm injuries among children and teenagers, and an 85% lower risk of unintentional firearm injuries. So some commonly used secure storage practices include using a cable lock, lockbox, or firearm safe, as well as storing firearms unloaded with ammunition stored separately. Unsecured guns also contribute to the staggering number of guns stolen every year. An estimated 380,000 guns are stolen from private gun owners every year, and gun owners were 3 times more likely to have a gun stolen if they carried a gun in the last month. Research also suggests that nearly 1/4 of stolen guns are taken from cars. So storing a gun in a glove compartment or underneath a car seat is not considered secure storage. So on our website, and I'll give you that link at the end, we have a handout on secure storage with more information. So moving on to the M in SMART. M stands for model responsible behavior. Every law-abiding adult has the right to decide whether or not to have a gun in the home, but you cannot rely on curious kids not to find a gun. As we saw on the slide before, one study showed that the majority of children are aware of where their parents store their guns, and that more than 1/3 reported handling their parents' guns, many doing so without the knowledge of their parents. Nearly 1/4 of parents did not know that their children had handled the gun in their home. It is always an adult's responsibility to prevent unauthorized access to guns, not a curious child's responsibility to avoid guns. By all means, talk to your kids about gun safety, but remember that is a precaution, not a guarantee. One study found that young children who go through a week-long gun safety training are just as likely as children with no training to approach or play with a handgun when they find one. Modeling responsible behavior means that smart adults make sure that kids don't have the opportunity to access guns. That said, you can't control the environment that your child is in all the time. So you should teach them not to touch a gun if they come across one, real or pretend, and give them the tools to get out of a dangerous situation and to alert an adult. As an adult, it's your responsibility to do everything you can to prevent them from getting in a dangerous situation to begin with. As I mentioned earlier on our website, we have handouts on best practices for talking to children and teens about guns. So the letter A, as we've mentioned, there are approximately 5.4 million children in the US living in a household with at least one loaded unlocked gun. So that's why you need to ask about firearms in other homes your child visits, and that's the A in SMART. So for the parents and caregivers who are listening to this, what are some of the things that you ask about before allowing your child to go to a friend or someone else's home? So thinking back in my own time, my son was allergic to dairy. So I would ask about what foods they might be eating. I'd also ask about if they were playing video games or if there were adults going to be around. You might be concerned with pets or pools on the property, or as children get older, alcohol access. So all of those things are really a part of any safety conversation. And asking about guns in the home should be an essential part of your safety conversations. So asking about guns in the home should be as natural as asking about any of these other things, but it can seem awkward at first. So try making it part of your general safety conversation. And you might even try asking via email or text if you feel uncomfortable at first. And we also have a handout available about secure storage with more information and how to ask about it. So here are some examples that you might be texting. He isn't allergic to anything. One other safety question, do you guys have guns in the home? I know kids are curious, and I just want to make sure if you do have any, that they are securely stored. And the response, screen time is okay, just in case they want to play and we have time. If not, then that's okay too. No guns. Great. Yes, video games are okay. And the good news is, as I said, in my generation, we didn't really ask about these things, but we are finding with our conversations with younger parents, they are asking about this now. So as it becomes more the norm, the good news is that will help keep kids safe. Okay, moving on to the letter R. Let's talk about recognizing the role of guns in suicide, and that is the R in SMART. Access to a gun can mean the difference between life and death, and we saw that in Mikey's story. As our children get older, you may need to consider taking another look at your storage methods. If you've been using a simple cable lock, you may want to think about getting a gun safe. We all know how curious children can be, so as they get older and more resourceful, we need to act accordingly. Also, if you know your loved one is in distress, you might want to consider temporarily removing a gun from the home. Take this information into consideration. Most people who attempt suicide do not die unless they use a gun. In fact, 90% of suicide attempts with a gun result in death, and that is a much higher fatality rate than any other means of self-harm. This contributes to the fact that 40% of child suicides involve a gun. So if you consider temporarily removing a gun from your home, how can you do that? Where can you bring it? Local law enforcement may be willing to temporarily store your guns in some locations. Locally, I would give them a call and find out if that's an option. Some licensed gun dealers or gun ranges may be willing to temporarily store your guns. Or you could temporarily store your guns in the home of a friend or family member. Please check with local law enforcement or your local gun shop before you do this to make sure you can do it legally. And to manage risk for that friend or family member, you should lock any guns that you transfer and not provide the key or code. So the numbers around suicide are very daunting. The National Youth Survey conducted by the CDC showed that 17% of high school students surveyed had seriously considered attempting suicide within the last year. And one study showed that 41% of adolescents in gun-owning households report having easy access to the guns in their homes. As we discussed earlier, research shows that secure firearm storage is associated with a decreased risk of child firearm suicide. And I think these numbers show you why. We have information about resources for suicide prevention. And this also includes the suicide prevention hotline. So you can check that out on our website as well. Now on to our last letter, T. T stands for tell, and that is the power of being smart. We have heard from people that because of BeSmart, they know to ask about the presence of guns before their children go to other people's homes, that they have talked to family members about guns in the homes when they have recognized the role of guns in suicide, and that gun owners are modeling responsible behavior as a direct result of BeSmart. It's important to the people who own and work with guns. It's important that the people who work and own with guns are a part of this conversation. And research shows that law enforcement, the military, and hunting or outdoor groups are particularly effective at communicating safe storage practices. So who are you going to tell to be smart today? So BeSmart, S stands for secure all guns in your homes and vehicles. M stands for model responsible behavior. A stands for asking about unsecured guns in other homes. R is for recognizing the role of guns in suicide. And T, we hope you will tell your peers to be smart. And here's some of our sources. So since the inception of BeSmart in May of 2015, thousands of volunteers have been trained to deliver the BeSmart message at community presentations, tabling events, and in other venues. And we've held over 6,000 events in all 50 states. We've presented at a variety of state and national conferences for organizations such as the National PTA, Safe Kids Worldwide, and the American Medical Student Association. BeSmart is presented at Rotary Club meetings, PTA meetings, in homes, doctors' offices, and just to name a few. Here in San Diego, our trained presenters can provide this free 20-minute program in either English or in Spanish or both. And if conditions permit, we can present in person or virtually like I'm doing today. So if you are interested in our resources, all the handouts I mentioned, you can take a look at our national website, which is besmartforkids.org. If you have any questions about the content of my presentation or comments, I can be reached at besmartsd1@gmail.com. And thank you so much for spending your time with me today. And thank you for being smart.